Welcome back to the front row seat. Well, I had to do another video because it was really interesting how I was talking about how I became, how I went from a person who was just mostly glass half empty perspective. It was just a negative perspective. And I worked my way from being the most negative person in the room to having a more positive attitude. And it's something that I work on all the time. But the funny thing about it was I had just mentioned that about the glass was either half full or half empty, and I told the story about the street sweeper. The day I was out eating lunch and me and a friend was sitting there eating and on a patio, and here comes the street sweeper to blow food all up in the to blow sand all up in the food. And I immediately took the glass half full, he took the glass half empty. No, vice versa. He stayed positive and had a positive outcome. I was negative, but I caught it in that moment because his reaction to it was just so different than mine. And I just went, what did he just do there? And we talked about it and he explained it. So anyway, I was talking about the street sweeper story and how as I worked toward being a more positive person, and I just finished that story, and I'd walked around the corner, and I talked for another 30 minutes after that video, and I look up at my camera, and it wasn't recording anymore. I have a different phone, so I'd pushed a button, and it stopped the recording. So I immediately, I had like 3 thoughts in a row. I wanted to really kind of flesh this out for myself too, As, the event happened, my phone didn't record it. I just lost 30 minutes of footage. So, and I really liked the story I told too. And I was like, oh darn, now I got to do it again. And right at that moment, that thought showed up. And then the next thought showed up where it was, well, maybe the first video was just fine. It cut off right at the right place. And I caught myself. I had on my plate, because I'm learning to not react to things, to watch what's happening. Watch my environment, see what's going on. And I looked at it and went, oh, I have both options right there to go positive or negative, because as you work out of this, reactive state where your thoughts automatically go to the negative, as you work your way out of that, it's not just like an overnight thing. It's like, oh, I've learned how to do this and now I do it. It's not like that. It's more like a where you think around this for a little bit. It's like, okay, I don't have to react. I can just watch what's going on and think about it for a minute. Put that space in there. The space between, event and how you're going to respond, because you want to respond and not react. So it was funny because I just talked about the street sweeper thing, and then right after that I had an opportunity to practice it, right? So I watched the whole thing and I observed it and I went, oh, so I still get the negative response there, but I don't have to pick it. And so then I thought about it for a little longer, so I don't have to pick it. And because I'm not reacting and I'm not upset about it, now I have all these other choices I can do. And I was like, well, I can make another video. Well, I'll make another video and it'll be just as good as what I didn't videotape. And just, there's so much more present there in choices that are just hard to see. Especially, you know, after me spending just time and time again of just reacting, immediately going to the negative thoughts or negative response. You know, it could have went, oh no, I've ruined my video, I've ruined my day, blah, bah humbug. And that would have been me in the past. And it just showed me that as I learn and grow, that it's a progression and it gets better. And every time you do that and then you think about it, it gets easier. And I didn't automatically take the negative thought that was there. There was one there for you because, you know, there's all kinds of choices there. And then, and then after I got home, it really tickled me because it was almost like I told the story, and so that I would realize where I'm at in the story and what I was doing. My experience, something would happen that would allow me to practice some more and to actually go a little deeper into it and see it, you know, from a deeper perspective. Because, you know, our thoughts and feelings and reacting and the way we process information, it helps create a reality. So if we're always, you know, if I'm always going to the negative thing, well, that's what my reality turns out to be. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to start working on that, because I was tired of having a negative reality. I had a negative reality and a negative attitude. I was bah humbug. And that's just how I was. I still have days that are challenging. And then when I have those days, I'm learning to just look at it and say, you know, I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm evolving. And this is where I am still learning. So this struggle is not hurting me. It's just where I'm at. And so I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, I've got an opportunity to learn something here. And whatever I learn is probably going to be about something I'm doing. And so that's why I wanted to do this video, because I wanted to talk about the funny scenario as I'm standing there holding my camera and I see the street sweeper and my mind fly by. And my mind's like, what you gonna do? Which one you gonna pick? And then I noticed that there's, without reacting and just that knee-jerk thing, when you can get rid of that, all of the other options and choices are available. They're all right there. But once you react, it's almost like a dry erase board. You react, boom, dry erase board. All of those options just get erased off the board, and then you just get frustrated. So I thought it was really interesting. And it also made me, you know, just kind of appreciate some of the work I've done and how it's now allowing me to think in different ways and have different responses to things going on in my reality. And it is work, and sometimes it gets hard, but wow, you're not as upset as much. And you get to laugh, and sometimes it just gets funny. And I do love that part of it. It's just all journey of learning. I was thinking about another thing, because, you know, I kind of got introduced with the simulation theory when I went to the immersives and met Tom Campbell and started working around getting rid of fears. And I was thinking about how my process has evolved since then. And it seems like the whole premise is of, well, just get rid of your fear and your reality will change. It's true. But then there's another thing that happens too. Because as you work on your fear, you have to really kind of pay attention to how you feel. And when you feel negative, that's just that fear under there. Even if you're if you're angry, that's just another hat that fear has parades around in thinks it looks cute and stuff. And it's all the same thing. But as I worked on these fears and as I started really getting in there to the layers of the onion, getting to the deeper stuff, the fears that are completely, hidden, they were hidden out of my view because there was things about myself I didn't like. So I'd push it down. And it was just part of my unconscious world, I guess. So anyway, as I started doing this work around these fears, I started noticing these, I don't even know what to call it. I started noticing it's a bigger inner world than I ever imagined. And that I think that as a species, especially here in the West, we kind of took a turn off into materialism. And because of that, I think what happened was everything became attributed to the external world. And the internal world, it just got kind of relegated to the back benches. They weren't on the front row anymore. They were on the back benches, more in a, worshiping of the God or their God or whatever that is. And what I noticed is that there's this whole inner world, this whole inner landscape, put it that way. And as I figured since I'm already in here dealing with fear, I might as well just take a look around, get to know the place. And what I found is that, it's almost like this inner world is probably the more real world and the simulation. If all the physical matter is not real, then that would mean that all the inner world is the real world. Because I found a lot more in this inner world than I ever knew existed when I started this whole process. And then I read a little bit more about it, and I looked up, one of the pioneers in this area was Carl Jung. He was a famous, they call him the father of, psychology or whatever. But I'd never read any of his stuff, so I didn't really know what. I'd heard his name, but I'd never read any of his material. So that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. I started reading it. I was like, oh my gosh, he's talking about this inner world that I've been exploring and finding things in here and wondering what's going on with that, and I think that's where we kind of got off track with our growth as a species. We almost went off-roading into this material world, and where everything that we thought about was external to us, and the internal world was just relegated to, oh, that's just spiritual stuff, and that's over there in the church. Don't talk about it. And for those that were really intuitive and had a very vibrant imaginary world, we could see in our culture that that's just not things we talk about, and so don't say nothing. That's probably why I forgot all about it. But I just found it interesting that there's a whole thing with that, and that I think as we move forward and doing this inner work, I think it's going to come back to the forefront, or just at least be taken out of the, realm of spirituality only to, well, this is a real reality also, and it's part of this other reality, and that it's all connected together in one big thing. And then when that, information, it may become popular, it may not. It seems like it is. There's a new thing out called the telepathy tapes, and just recently, Tom is getting a bigger, wider audience, and he was talking about the experiments that they did long ago, and how he found this inner world too, and he was just curious, what is this thing that they were accessing? So it's just been quite the journey. And through the journey, it goes up and down. It's like that growth, projection, where you'll go back 2 steps and then you go forward 2 steps. Then you'll go another step and then you'll go back 1 step, and it's just a stair-stepping process of growth and learning. And I know that it does work because my reality did shift and change. So as I was, thinking around this thing too, and the simulation theory, which is all it is, it's all anything can be really. I was thinking about, what if, it is a simulation? Because I do have some evidence, and I did do some experiments that kind of showed me that there is something connected here with my mind in the external world, and that there is this mind over matter thing happening, because we do have the placebo effect. So what is that? And so it was like, okay, well, what if this might be a self-simulator? But it's a multiplayer self-simulator. So, for instance, I would come here and it's a simulation of myself, or, that's all I call it, the inner world, the inner you, the self. So as a self-simulator, what that would do is the whole world is just your feedback on how you're doing, where you're at, what you're thinking, how you feel, what you love, what you hate. That stuff shows up too, even though you hate it. And it's showing up because you hate it. And I did find that to be true in my reality. And so this whole mirror thing, what made me even go deeper into that, it's like, well, it really does seem like this is some kind of self thing, It's simulating itself, or I'm simulating me, or something like that. And the main reason I think that is because I just kind of started noticing that my life was a bit like the Matrix. There he is. Tom Campbell's the architect. And the other players were there too. I don't want to name names, but they were there. All of them. Morpheus, he's the one that caused Neo to struggle the most, But he was struggling with himself. Had nothing to do with Morpheus. It was Neo. He had to come into his own. So all the characters showed up and they were there. All the Matrix characters. So it's like that would just be like a fractal and a fractal, wouldn't it? And if we are doing this self-stimulation thing, then what would happen is other people, that they're in their own self-stimulator, and if they have something that resonates with your with the contents of your being, yourself, then it's going to pull those two together. And like that thing, opposites attract, then they attack, because they don't know that it's them doing it. And so it just always looks like it's the other person doing it. So this new thing, the self simulator. I think that it would be the same, premise as it would still have the coordinates in it. When I think of anything, that would be a coordinate with an IP address with information around it. A self-simulator information. An information self-simulator. There we go. Yeah, that's it. And when I looked back through my life, it was almost like that other movie, like Wizard of Oz, right? Like she goes to this place, and then all the characters are in it were characters that she knew too, right? The characters, they were the same characters. And when I looked at my past and thought about all the different people I've met back when I was nursing and when all this stuff was going on throughout my life, as I get older, I was able to write a whole page of, people and experiences, and I could match them all up to situations that I experienced and went through when I was young. And it was like they were just reappearing, but in different settings, different people, but they were still the same character. So I don't know if that's what anybody else is experiencing, but that's what I've been experiencing. This is probably a self-simulator. And if that's true, it's like, we don't have to worry too much about, breaking the world, because it's yours. It's yourself. You're doing it. And worry doesn't help anything anyway. So, I don't know. Y'all kind of write down, people and places and things, and see if you can find these connections to, it being revolving around similar situations and people from your family of origin or the people around you. See if you can find that, and see, are you in a loop too? Just recreating the same thing over and over again. Because as I, do this inner work and go in, I can find where all that stuff comes from. Where, each character will have a constellations of that's the way this character is. This is how they kind of think. And then I can kind of see where it's all related to each other. But it could just be me. Who knows? This is whatever it is, it's a really, really complicated, complex realm, whatever it is. And I do know that there are ways to grow and evolve here that changes reality and changes, it changes the characters, and it's almost like, okay, so for instance, I had this one character in my family that was extremely difficult, and then they kept reappearing over and over again, but then it evolved as I started the healing process and healing the ways that I felt, the beliefs that I took on that weren't true. Little kids do that, everything is personal to the little kids, so they take all that on and take on everybody else's issues too that's not even really theirs. And so as I started healing that stuff, as I found it when I was working on fears and doing all that work, I was just noticing that each time I would come in contact with these characters, they changed a little bit, where they were better than they were before. So it's almost like the characters are there, and you keep meeting them so that you can heal this specific thing. And that would make a really good way to set up a consciousness trainer, and to help train the chi energy train the chi energy into a more coherent vibration from fear to love. It would work great. And you would never be the wiser that that's what's happening, because, you know, the faces change and the situations change. So it's really hard to catch it doing it. I feel like I'm in that Matrix movie walking around, and that lady in the red dress walks by and he says, wait a minute. Wait a minute, what's going on here? It's really interesting. Just something to ponder. So yeah, you know, and I've seen people that they walk around every day. They have a perspective of the glass is half full. It's almost like a lens that they see the world through. And so when something happens, they're not reacting, they're responding to it. And they're just recognizing what it is and just flowing through it. And I do think that the more positive they get and the more accomplished they are, I think they have been practicing a lot. And so I think that's how that works too. Because I guess you would get better at it the more you practice. Practice makes perfect. So I just wanted to tell the rest of the story of what happened after the street sweeper story. And how it wasn't perfect, that I didn't just go automatically to, oh, I'm a positive person, everything's great. No, first I had, oh no, I lost all my footage. And then I just waited a minute because I wasn't going to react. I'm learning not to. And then the rest of it started coming. Of, well, I could do this, I could do that. Or, it doesn't even matter at all because it's really freezing out here. My hands are frozen. So I'm going to go home and get warm and get a cup of hot chocolate. That sounds good. And so just, don't be discouraged, So if you find that, a pessimistic lens over your awareness, just notice it. And like, flip it out. It's like those old, films where they could flip the lenses around. Flip yourself into another lens and just keep practicing it. Because as you practice, you just get better and better at it to where it's just automatic. And I suspect that's what's going to happen in time as I continue to do this and try to go from, a completely negative perspective to a more positive one. It can't be just a big jump, boom, there you are. Aw. It's kind of like that story about that man. I don't remember his name, but it's an old parable about the guy that all of his days he's pushing this rock uphill. And then he gets it all the way to the top of the hill, and then it rolls back down. And he goes back down, and then he pushes it back to the top of the hill, and once again it rolls back down. And over and over again, that's what's happening. And what if the guy wasn't thinking, this totally sucks. I keep rolling this rock up there. I get it all the way up there and it just rolls right back down. Well, what if he was really thinking, if I keep rolling this rock, I know it's going to roll back down, but the thing about it is, the rock is going to get a lot easier to roll up that hill every time I do it. Every single time I struggle and roll this rock up this hill, I get really good at rolling this rock up this hill. And that makes me resilient and strong. So that's my message of the day. Everybody have a good one and enjoy the rest of the weekend. And until next time, see you later.